There were some boys there who were licensed, and they were interested in her getting back on. So she studied, she got her technician license. She sent me an email last month. She was so excited. She said she had the boys drive her to the test session that was taking place. It must have been in Tacoma or Seattle, Washington. Took them to the test session. She passed her general license. So she said, at 99 and a half,
oh, wow,
I have passed my general class license. So I have corresponded back with her, and I'm kind of putting the pressure on her to get her extra before she's 100. So we'll see what happens.
Did you send that?
It's amazing.
Did you send that on to the league as a little?
I haven't. I need to communicate with them because, and she sent me some nice. I should have thought to bring that in, but there was a nice thing from her retirement community where they have a brochure, and in one of the pictures shows her there operating their station.
Not doing tower work.
No. She leaves that to the boys, the young boys in their age.
Yeah.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum, there are young ladies getting into amateur radio in a big way. There's a gal from southern New Hampshire who's just become a correspondent for one of the amateur radio magazines. I had the pleasure.
We met her at Boxborough.
I had the pleasure of meeting her at Boxborough.
Yeah.
And she's 13.
So she was there with her dad, right?
Yeah. And she's now writing a quarterly article for one of the major publications.
That's interesting.
And so there are hams from every age, in women as well as men. I mean, you hear the stories of some of the young boys. There are young women as well, grade school, junior high age, middle school, high school.
Well, I attended some of the out in Dayton at the Dayton Ham Convention every year. They have a whole section where they have a youth forum, and there's a lot of young girls that are involved. And they're brilliant kids. It's great.
And we're getting some of them to join our organization. I think our organization is having a resurgence. Like most clubs, I think, especially those that were started in the 50s and 60s, there was a huge cultural thing to belong to clubs at that time, I think, especially for women. At that point in time in the 50s, many women were at home. They were not working outside of their home. They were able to get on the radio during the daytime when the rest of the family was gone to work or school. There were nets with all sorts of catchy names like the ironing board net and things like that, because these gals were getting on during the day. There were lots of 75-meter nets and other local area type nets, some of which are still in existence, but there's one here in New England that meets on Wednesday mornings at 8:30. Well, that works for people that are retired or are home for whatever reason, but for most women these days, they're working outside the home and it doesn't meet their needs. So in that light, I was in conjunction with a gal from Missouri this summer. We started a net on 20 meters in the evening on Thursday nights. And of course 20 meters in the evening right now is useless. Right. So we're working on 40 meters right now. We'll go back to 20 when conditions allow. We were doing both for a while. We were switching back and forth between 40 and 20. We've had close to 50 different women across the country check in despite abysmal conditions over the last terrible, so we started in July and it's December, so 6 months we've had 50 different women check in.
Now, how do you network that to get them?
It's very very informal. I usually act as one of the net controls. There's a gal down in Alabama who's got a gangbuster signal, and she's kind of an alternate net control. There's a gal out in New Mexico who's kind of been a third alternate. It's very loosely structured. Everybody just tries to make a contact with somebody else. A lot of the gals are trying to work for YLCC, Work 100 YLs. There's WASYL, Worked All States, Worked All Continents, DXCCYL.
Oh, fantastic.
So those are all awards that are offered by Young Ladies Radio League, and most of them are open to anyone who wants to work them. We have one gentleman down in Arkansas, who has made 315 confirmed contacts. DX.
Wow.
DX
And I
YL.
bet one of the contacts that he's had in more than one location is Ann Santos. from New
WA1S.
Hampshire. Right, because she's phenomenal. Some of the places that she's traveled, she's a great operator.
She's a fantastic CW operator and also phone and a world traveler, de-expeditioner extraordinaire.
That's the one from New Hampshire.
Right.
Yeah.
She's been to Curay, Clipperton.
She just came. That was quite the trip to Clipperton.
Yeah, I worked her when she was on Clipperton.
Yeah, I've worked her most of the times that she's been on her de-expeditions. Interesting, in the end of, was in September, a group from southern Alabama went out on one of the islands out in the Gulf, and they had one YL as part of their team, and I forget the club. It's a DX club in southern Alabama. I don't remember the name of the club, but they were out on this island. It's not even an island. I think the whole thing might be as big as this studio where there's dry land.
Yeah.
It's been hammered by the hurricanes, but it was a new island on the air. So they were operating as a new island on the air and a de-expedition, and the YL was the first one they put on, and she made the first contacts on the island.
Some people, unless they're really involved in amateur radio, I mean, they hear us talking about not as big as a studio. What was that one that they were out? It wasn't
Scarborough Reef.
Scarborough
Reef, right down here in the South China Sea. Right here, absolutely unbelievable. Just
we're higher sitting in these chairs,
right.
And everybody, if you look at their cards, or if you go into, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I don't know.
I think they do have some.
Probably have something on YouTube.
Right.
But if you look at them, they all have their life vests on.
Sure.
And their radios are probably 6 inches above the water.
Yeah.
Just positively unbelievable. You know there was no rising tides or anything down there.
I don't think that any women went on that last particular, not for any reason to exclude them other than why would anybody want to put themselves through that?
Yeah.
It was pretty tough.
And you were talking, you were talking about Huntsville, you were talking about Boxborough, and then Orlando. And for our viewers, an awful lot goes on other than on the radio.
Oh, at these conventions.
These ham conventions are just unreal. It usually lasts 2 or 3 days, usually over weekends.
Right. We'll be going down to the one in Orlando, and that's
Orlando.
Turned out to be pretty good.
Now, the one out in Ohio.
Dayton.
In Dayton. How many would you just estimate? And did you go to Dayton too, Ian?
Yes,
I'm the only one that hasn't been to Dayton.
At its peak, and I think they probably had 25 or 6,000, maybe even more than that. I think the attendance this past year was around 22,000, which is still a pretty good turnout.
22,000 people.
In these economic times.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people
there are
buying
people from
equipment
all over the world that come.
Yeah,
There's some great stories.
The fellow that I don't know if you were there. We had a guy come in from Switzerland, and his daughter lives here in Braintree, and he has a Swiss call, and he came in and he got his license in this country at one of our VE sessions. And I was on Echolink one day, and this guy called me, and it was a KB1 call he called me with, and I didn't recognize the call, and we start talking, and he told me he got his license in Braintree.
No kidding.
And I said, "Oh, you did?" I said, "You remember the tall, good-looking guy?" He says, "Yeah, Bill." I said, "Well, you're talking to him." I mean, once again, a small world.
Yeah.
But I mean, and where I was going with this, he was going from here, and then he was going up into Canada, and his final destination, he does it every year, was Dayton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's where he was
Right.
headed, you know.
Now, one of the when you're talking about some of the women involved with amateur radio. In a few weeks' time, I think we're going to run a show about the Marconi event that we did.
Oh.
And we had the big 100th anniversary back in 2003. Well, one of the people that, I'd say the person that really made that happen, there were a lot of us that got involved and did a lot of work, but the one person who really put that all together was Barbara. KB1, I'm trying to remember the last, GSO, sorry. Anyways, Barbara Dugan, she was the one she worked for the Park Service, ranger for the Park Service down in